Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, we have a bunch of mailbag questions that you guys submitted. No game for the Dodgers, so we're going to talk about Joey Gallo. We're going to talk about upcoming postseason roster and current roster and just everything that's going on with the Dodgers right now. So that's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is Locked On Dodgers, and we are one of the only Dodger podcasts, or maybe the only Dodger podcast that goes Monday through Friday. And you can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. If this is your first time listening or watching, you usually see someone next to me. That's Jeff Snider. He's having technical difficulties, so you just get if you're watching on YouTube, you just get Jeff doing, looks like some prayer hands in a very small capacity. You get me, my full face. So congrats to you guys on that one, I guess. But if you haven't watched before, we're both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the Dodgers in a variety of ways. One of those ways being this podcast here where we talk about the Dodgers. And with no game on Monday, we are going to take questions from you listeners. While there was no game on Monday, there was activity at Dodger Stadium. Clayton Kershaw's Ping Pong for a Purpose went on. I was there for media for the red carpet event, but a lot of the Dodgers seem to not want to talk to media on their day off. So wasn't too much going on there. And then media was not allowed to stay for the rest of the event. So I don't know who's winning. I think it's probably over by now as we're talking at 11 p.m. on the Monday. All that to say, Jeff, that, I'm sad I don't get to see you today.
Yeah, it's it's probably not the end of the world. I'm not bad looking, but my face probably isn't what brings these kids to the yard, as Gwen Stefani said.
I don't know. We had some pretty good numbers when I forgot to put the cover photo, and you were the cover photo. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. All right. So maybe my face is what brings people to this show. If so, I apologize. I tried to at least make my still photo bigger, but I couldn't even figure that out. So, traveling is hard, and I'm dealing with the unusual setup, and my camera just isn't working tonight. So I apologize, but the content will be just as good as ever, even if the production value is down a little bit.
Yes, and that content is coming from the question you guys asked us. We got about 23 replies, some of those having multiple questions. So we're not going to get to every question in this episode, but there is another off day on Thursday, and we will try to get to every question, if not today, by Thursday for sure. This first segment, we're going to focus on Joey Gallo. We got a lot of Joey Gallo questions and Joey Gallo related questions. Some of those being, Juan at JD234218 asks, who's not making a playoff roster on the offensive end with Gallo being added? I'm really lost on what the final roster is going to look like. We got Ernie at Ernie_V1855. Can the Dodgers actually fix Gallo and make him into an asset again? Beanstalk at Edgar Lopez 1227 asks, what will happen with Gallo when Pilar and Rios are healthy? And Saul at Saul2461, if Gallo doesn't hit a home run in the next few games, should he be DFA'd? With all that being said, let's kind of start out. Oh, and also we got Champ City LA, the thought process in trading away Lamb and trading for Gallo. So first, let's just start off with Gallo in general. We didn't really get to talk to it in depth when we when the Dodgers did trade for him, because we had the Vin episode and then we had a split episode on our end. But yeah, Jeff, is there any hope for Joey Gallo? Is there, what reason did you see for the Dodgers going after him, and is it going to come to fruition?
Yeah, I think the reason for going after Gallo, that question kind of lumped it together with Lamb. I feel like Lamb was a different thing. Lamb wasn't going to get playing time. There was questions about his roster spot with people coming back, and he would be a guy who they would have lost for agency anyway. And so trade him for something. And honestly, Lamb had kind of deserved a chance to get more playing time. I don't know for sure if the Dodgers took into account the fact that he is from Seattle, and in that trade. But, it seemed like that was kind of a win-win trade for Lamb, and with the Dodgers, at least not a lose trade for the Dodgers, because there wasn't really a spot for him. As for Gallo, it's a lottery ticket. It's a buy low on a guy who has had success in the past, and he's been really bad lately. And if there's a team that can fix him, it's probably the Dodgers. I don't have any idea, because even the fixed version of Joey Gallo, I'm not totally sure that Dodger fans would love that version. It's a ton of home runs, but also a ton of strikeouts. And I think Dodger fans would learn to love the home runs. But I mean, Joey Gallo at his best is a guy who hits, 200 and hits a bunch of home runs. Like, his career batting average is 201. And so even before his 160 this year, I mean, he hasn't batted over 200 since 2019. And realistically, that was the outlier. 2019, he batted 253. That's the only time he's batted over 209 in his career. And so Joey Gallo is not going to be an average hitter, but he does get a lot of walks. His on base percentage for his career is 327. It's been as high as 389. Even like in 2021 last year, he batted 199, but he had a 351 on base percentage, and he hit 38 home runs. If he could have a 351 on base percentage and hit 38 home runs, that's a very valuable player. I don't know if he's going to get back there, but I do honestly believe that the Dodgers will give him at least somewhat of a legitimate shot, give him at least a couple weeks to try to get it going and see if they can make some progress. One of the things is Edwin Rios, he's on a rehab assignment right now. And some of the questions kind of asked about Rios in relation to Gallo. Edwin Rios has minor league options left. And so they can just leave him in AAA when his rehab stint is over, and that'll be fine. They can option him and give Joey Gallo time, give Rios regular at bats. Like, I mean, you and I talked at the beginning of the season about how is Edwin Rios going to get regular at bats anyway. And so if Edwin Rios' best chance to be a contributor in October might be to spend most of the rest of the season in AAA getting regular at bats so that he can be ready to contribute. But yeah, I think they'll give Joey Gallo a chance. And then if it doesn't work out, yeah, they'll cut him. It was a very low risk trade. They traded a prospect who some of us have heard of. His future, I don't know how bright it is, but really it was, let's take a flyer on Joey Gallo and see if we can do anything. And if they do, great. And if not, no harm done.
They wouldn't trade, even if it was a lower name, they wouldn't have traded, somebody that was known in the organization if they weren't going to give Gallo some kind of leash. And from what we've seen since he's gotten to Dodger Stadium, he's taken batting practice before batting practice. So he's basically played like simulated game or simulated at bats before batting practice every day if they've had a game so far. And the Dodgers have had the iPads out there and the cameras out there. And I'm sure whatever it is, they're trying to work with him on it, where you see, where it could be, where he can contribute is, his exit velocity, max exit velocity is at the top, but his hard hit percentage is still in the 90th percentile. His barrel percentage is in the 97th percentile. And while, yeah, that doesn't always mean anything, that does mean he still hits the ball hard when he does hit it. And he's able to square the ball up at a decent amount of times. When we first got him, I said, if he can just hit like 2 home runs a week, that would be, pretty beneficial to the Dodgers, even if they're kind of sandwiched in between maybe a lot of strikeouts. But when the Dodgers have him in, I mean, he's not expected to be a main contributor. He's near the bottom of the lineup. It's kind of one of those things where if he hits, he hits, and he doesn't. And I do think he is playing for a spot on the postseason roster. I don't think that's at all guaranteed right now, but they're definitely going to give him the ability to earn his way onto the postseason roster. Now, if Max Muncy and Cody Bellinger continue to hit, that's going to make it a little bit harder if he doesn't figure it out, doesn't start hitting. But it's one of those where, it was a flyer. They took it. This is a guy who's hit 40 home runs multiple times in his career, a guy who can, I would imagine he's been a streaky hitter in his career to a certain extent. So maybe, they can fix one thing in his mechanics and he catches fire and, can win you a couple ball games in the span of a 2-3 week span. So, yeah, I mean, it was an odd trade when it happened. It remains kind of odd, especially with guys getting healthy and coming back soon. But it's one where the Dodgers felt like they could take a chance, and that's kind of what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the benefits of the position they're in.
Yeah. All right, we're going to have more questions, not Joey Gallo related. After we talk about Built Bars, after we talk about the new Built Bar Puffs, because guess what? There's a new flavor, and it's cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right, Built has done it. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. 160 calories, 15 grams of protein. Perfect snack. Perfect meal replacement if you're looking that way. Perfect, post workout snack. Whatever you want. Built Bar Puffs have got you covered, especially the new cookie dough chunk puff. And whether you need a snack or a late night treat or whatever it is, Built is the perfect protein bar and tastes better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar. And you get 15% off right now with the promo code LOCKED15 if you go to Built.com. That's Built.com, 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15. All right, Jeff, let's keep going with these questions. Like I said, we got a lot of questions here. We'll go a couple questions. One from Adams. Are Bellinger and Muncy finally finding their long lost swings down the stretch? And then one question that comes with that I know you have some research on, comes from Frank at Frank Antonoff. He says, is Muncy playing every day in the field any part of his recent resurgence? He says it might be a question for Max, but he thinks it might be related.
Yeah, to answer the question about the two of them, yeah, both of those guys are hitting really, really well in the last week or so. And it seems like we saw it starting to happen with Muncy even before the numbers started showing up. He was hitting the ball harder, and that often happens. You hit it harder and have some bad luck, but you keep hitting it hard, and the good luck eventually comes. Bellinger, I was noticing today when I was writing about the Dodgers that a lot of people on Twitter have been mentioning that Bellinger, it's a noticeable swing change in the last week or two. And, go figure. Cody Bellinger making a swing change. That's kind of what he's most famous for at this point, is tweaking his swing all the time. But this one seems to be working. I was really, really impressed with Bellinger. 2 home runs on Sunday, both going, dead center, a little bit left of center, kind of hit it to center and then let it slice, and going with that natural power rather than trying to pull the ball, because it's not like the pitches were way outside. It was just, okay, I can stay through the ball and I can drive it up the middle. And, it was Bellinger's first 2 home runs since he started doing things. But he's got 6 extra base hits in his last 7 games. His OPS is over 1,000 in those games. Max Muncy, kind of the same boat, OPS over 1,000 in his last 7 or 8 games. And yeah, it's just, if both of them could really turn it on, that would be pretty remarkable. As for the question of whether Muncy's resurgence has to do with playing in the field every day, my guess is no, simply because he has played in the field for a long time. Basically, the last time Max Muncy DH'd was July 10th. So his playing in the field every day started at least a week and a half or 2 weeks before this hot streak. And before that time, it had been June 29th. And so he DH'd on June 28th and 29th. He's only DH'd once since then. And so, well, yeah, I mean, he is playing in the field every day right now. But in those, since June 29th, when he's only DH'd once, his batting average is 198. His OPS is 724. So this resurgence, if it's connected to playing in the field every day, it was a very delayed reaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and even then, still not up to normal Max Muncy that we know and love, and he was playing in the field every day those times. So, sticking with the guys we just mentioned, we had a question from Michael at Whitman7 about, is Bellinger playing himself into returning via arbitration next year? And then we had another question about Bellinger about, I lost the question. I'll find it right now. But basically about Bellinger and kind of the question we've had about next season and how that goes. Oh, here we go from CHR Lopez 1021. Do you see Bellinger coming back next year, win or lose World Series, or not getting there? His last year before free agency will be next year, and he thinks they would rather get something for him. Realistically, non-tender, I don't think there's any chance the Dodgers don't tender Cody Bellinger a contract. In a perfect world, the Dodgers could sign him to like a short-term deal that's not worth that much. I don't know how much he's projected to make in arbitration, but it's going to be more than probably he played worthy of this year in terms of both offense and defense, unless he really has a hot last 2 months of the season. But I don't see there's any way they don't tender him a contract, and I can't really see there being a way they trade him. There's no way you can get the value that you'd want for him. So at that point, you just kind of salary dumping, and you don't necessarily have a center fielder of the future. James Outman can play center field, but we don't know if he can hit long term over the course of a season. Chris Taylor can play center field, but Chris Taylor is more valuable more when he can play multiple positions and move around. So unless they went out and got an outfielder, I don't see there being a way Bellinger's not at least on the team next year and probably still the starting center fielder.
Yeah, Bellinger will make, if they do tender him a contract, he'll make at least $13.6 million next year, because he's making $17 million this year, and 20% is the largest pay cut that a player is allowed to take in arbitration. Realistically, it wouldn't even be that. Realistically, Bellinger's going to make at least $17 million next year. Guys never take pay cuts in arbitration, and I doubt he'd be the first. The one thing that you kind of touched on is it wouldn't shock me if the Dodgers, they don't non-tender him, they tender him, and then instead of going to arbitration, if they were to agree to a 3-year extension for 30 million, 33 million, something to get that average salary down. It's still a lot more guaranteed money than he has coming to him right now, but it's maybe more in line with the value he has provided the last year or two. And so maybe that's an option. But yeah, I mean, they're not going to let him go for nothing. So they're not going to non-tender him. They could trade him. Yeah, you read that question for Chris Lopez. Chris also DM'd me a screenshot of a chat on MLB Trade Rumors. And that guy on there said he expects the Dodgers to decline their team option on Max Muncy and to non-tender Cody Bellinger. And for me, I don't see the Bellinger thing happening, and I have a hard time seeing the Muncy thing happen. And they're both still very valuable when they're on, and way too much potential to just give up on them. And I could be wrong, and it could be my own sentimentality, but yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts.
It would be weird for the Dodgers to essentially cheap out would be the reason they do it. It's there's no harm in bringing them back, and then if it doesn't work out, you end up having to get rid of them or put them on the bench or whatever it is. So it'd be weird for the Dodgers to do that, and knowing that's the way they've gotten certain guys before. The Mets, to a certain extent, kind of cheaped out not tendering Justin Turner a contract, because even if it wasn't going to cost them that much, and like I said, if it didn't work out, they could have just let him go and $8 million or $2 million, however much Turner was going to make back then. So I don't see, that's the main reason I don't see it happening, because there's no reason to do so. The Dodgers, haven't ever really cheaped out like that. For players that were going to be or have been part of like the team that they've had the last few years that's been winning. The other part too is just there's a lot of money coming off the books. So, you got David Price's contract. You got, assuming everything stays status quo with Trevor Bauer, you're not going to have his contract on the books. So with Muncy and Bellinger, even if it's a combined, even if Bellinger stays at 17 mil, Muncy's at 13, it's a combined 30 mil. That's basically just David Price's contract that he had, or not so much, because they only paid half of it. But, that's essentially going towards that. And even if they want to sign Trey Turner to a long-term deal, we know how clear the Dodgers books are after 2023 because they only really have Mookie, Freddie, and it would be Trey at that point that are signed to a longer term deal. So, and I think Chris Taylor might have the 1 year beyond that too, so or a couple years beyond that. So yeah, it would very much shock me for those things to happen.
Yeah, and the other thing that you kind of touched on is there's no obvious replacement for Cody Bellinger in center field. It's not like there's a stud center fielder coming on the market who they could sign to replace him in free agency. Bellinger's still very good defensively and has so much potential offensively. It probably makes a lot more sense to try to make it work with him and try to help him get back to peak performance than to go out and get, whoever Joe Blow is available on the market and try to fix that guy.
Yeah. All right, we got more questions coming for you, but first let's talk about BetOnline. BetOnline.net's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Also, the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered for every league: MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. Whatever you need, BetOnline.net has you covered. Check out their website today on your laptop or mobile device to learn more about the action that's going on. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jeff. We still have a few questions. We will take one. Roster construction's kind of a big one. We had a few kind of around that, so we'll stick with this. We have one from Nope at Entertain Me 43. It says, with everyone that we know that are scheduled / projected to return, who do you think gets DFA'd / optioned, etc., and who do you think doesn't return from the IL that we thought could? So there's a lot to this question, and we can pull out the roster and kind of build it. But yeah, Jeff, where are we at with some of the guys that are supposed to come back?
One of the names that jumps out when I hear this question is Tommy Kahnle, who, he's in his second year since signed with the Dodgers. Obviously spent the whole first year recuperating from Tommy John surgery, has made a couple appearances this season, but overall has been hurt a lot more of the time he's been with the Dodgers than not. And he has really good stuff, but it's hard to see, with the bullpen and with not really knowing what you're going to get from Kahnle and where he's at. I mean, as far as I know, he's not anywhere near the point in rehab that some of the other guys are. He's one that seems unlikely to me to actually return this season.
Yeah, and even if he is able to return, it's a matter of, well, if these other guys return, he probably doesn't have a spot on the roster just because they don't know what they have with him. So it's one where they might say, sorry, Tommy, but you're going to stay on the 60-day, and then his time will be up with the Dodgers. So if they want to bring him back, that's on them. But if not, then, they'll shake his hand and he'll find a new team for next season. But now when you look at the 60-day injured list, and the Dodgers have quite a squad on that. You got Walker Buehler, who's expected to be back. So that's one. You got, Tommy Kahnle would be 2, but I don't think Dustin May is 2. You got Blake Trinan 3. You got Edwin Rios 4. And that's 4 right there that you kind of expect to be back. You got Danny Duffy, Victor Gonzalez, Tommy Kahnle, all there too, which would be 7. I don't think they all come back. I do think we had a few questions about Victor Gonzalez. He's another one where even if he does, we haven't really heard too much about him. He's been throwing, but even if he does make it back, I don't think there's a spot for him right now. So they might just leave him and say, better luck in 2023. But then you look at the 4 names that I mentioned that should all be back by the end of the season. That means they're going to have to clear 4 spots on the 40-man roster. Jeff, is there a for sure clear 4 that we have that would come off or that would have to be, DFA'd?
It's kind of funny. David Price is always the go-to here.
Yeah.
And I still think that if enough of these guys do come back, I think that is David Price's ultimate fate. I don't think the ideal Dodgers bullpen in the postseason has David Price in it. And so he's one that's pretty obvious to me. You've got other guys who are, that on the injured list that maybe Although, no, I guess none of the 15-day guys are really eligible or likely to go on the 60-day. Hopefully not, anyway. Yeah, Kevin Pillar's a guy who would jump out at you, except he's on the 60-day IL right now too, and he's actually one who might muddy those things up because he might actually be ready. Uh, you know, Joey Gallo, who we talked about already. Uh, I don't know. Like it is Rylan Bannon, who
Yeah, one note we probably should note that.
yeah, the Dodgers just claimed Rylan Bannon from, I assume, the Orioles.
Yeah.
He was part of the Manny Machado trade, went from the Dodgers to the Orioles. The Dodgers just claimed him, immediately optioned him to the minors. So he's on the 40-man roster, which means he's probably first in line to get DFA'd when and if they need the spot. Hanser Alberto has redeemed himself more since early in the season when I thought, I don't know if this guy has a fit on this team offensively. He does now. Eddie Alvarez is a guy who you could see getting DFA'd just to make a spot on the 40-day. He doesn't really have a spot in the big leagues anymore, I don't think. And then Jake Reed is another guy who's in the minor leagues, not likely to be a big contributor to the big league team. He's been DFA'd several times before, and so he's one. I don't know. I think I probably just said 5 or 6 names, and some are more likely than others, but I think there's plenty of opportunities to get these guys onto the 40-man roster when we need to.
Yeah, I think Jake Reed, Rylan Bannon, that's 2 cleared off right away. I think, Price is the one that you didn't mention, Reyes Maranta, as good as he looked the other day, I think if it came down to it and it came down to a roster crunch, he's kind of the next guy that would be on there just because he doesn't necessarily have a for sure future with the team. And by that point, even if he gets claimed, okay, you have other guys that can come up and fill in. So, yeah, if you're looking right away 4, I think it's, Reed, Bannon, Maranta, and then maybe Eddie Alvarez as we get close because it's closer to the end of the season. They might be able to hope he can squeeze by and get by, and they can move him down. But I think those are kind of the ones that you're looking at. We did have a question about Pilar, and a question was basically worded about what happens to the roster when Pilar and Rios are healthy. I think when Rios is healthy, he can still find a way in his roster. But if Kevin Pillar's healthy and nobody has a crazy cold streak in the next month or so, however long it would take Pilar to be back, I don't think it's a guarantee he comes back. If Trace Thompson stays playing how he's playing, I think he has the roster spot over Kevin Pillar, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so too. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I know Pilar's talking about coming back this season, but he's working at Camelback Ranch, and I assume that the Dodgers are thinking of it more along the lines of, let's get you healthy and maybe sign you to a deal for next year and see what we can do next year. Because I think several things would have to go wrong for Kevin Pillar to be the best option on the major league roster anytime near October.
Yeah, exactly. And he probably doesn't fit it. If we're trying to find spots, for some of these other people, unfortunately Kevin Pillar doesn't quite have the power to move anyone else off the current roster. We have a lot more questions, a lot more about the bullpen and kind of everything else, but I do see a lot of questions just kind of asking for ETAs and updates on some of these pitchers. We kind of run through it almost every other day on the podcast, but if you don't listen every day, that's one reason you should. But if not, I'll just kind of run through them real quick. So Dustin May is expected to make a rehab start today, Tuesday. After that, Dave Roberts has said that he would throw another one, but it's also a possibility that he comes up to the Dodgers and makes one rehab start in the major leagues. Maybe in, not knowing that he's not going to throw 6-7 innings, knowing that he might throw more 4 or 5 innings. We got Blake Trinan. Blake Trinan's faced hitters on Saturday again. Haven't heard anything negative since then, so I would imagine he might get into a rehab assignment soon. So he's probably 2-3 weeks away just because he has to build up his arm and get ready to pitch, back to back, and maybe probably not multiple innings, but at least throw back to back or 2 out of 3 days, stuff like that. And so that's SMA. That's Blake Trinan. We got Victor Gonzalez, who I mentioned. He's been throwing, but haven't got any inclination that he's anywhere near being ready. And like we said earlier, even if he is ready, I don't know if that's necessarily something the Dodgers want to do right now, especially as they're trying to figure out their October. Caleb Ferguson, Alex Vesia, those guys have been here all year, and realistically, they were throwing a little bit better than Victor Gonzalez was, even with Victor Gonzalez pitching better. So in the spring before he got hurt. But I think that was it in terms of that. Like I said, we know there was a lot more questions. A lot of them are kind of similar. Talking about Trey Turner, talking about shortstop in the future, talking about bullpen. We'll get to those on Thursday. But Jeff, you got anything else, or did you see any other questions that we may want to talk real quick about?
No, I just got one last thought. You were talking about the bullpen, and a stat that I looked up today. I was writing about Yency Almonte's injury, and I was discussing how it wouldn't surprise me if the Dodgers use the Phantom IL for Evan Phillips at some point before the end of the season to give him a couple weeks off, just because he's already right around his career high in innings pitched, or at least his recent career high in innings pitched. And the Dodgers still hopefully have almost 3 months of baseball to play. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a little break. But I was looking at Almonte and Phillips and Caleb Ferguson. And the three of those guys have combined to throw 91 innings this year and have a combined 1.08 ERA. Like those three guys are the men in the bullpen right now. And all three of them are kind of unsung. I talk a lot about Evan Phillips here. I don't think we've given Yency Almonte as much credit as he deserves. And Caleb Ferguson has not allowed a run yet this year. He hasn't been pitching as long because he was recovering from Tommy John, but he's been outstanding. And those three guys, and when you look at, if you get Blake Trinan back healthy and Bruce Dargretter all back healthy, and, Dustin May, whether he's a starter or a reliever, if he's a starter, it pushes somebody else to the bullpen. And then Craig Kimbrell, his stuff is still good. He's showing signs. If the Dodgers have the potential for a really good bullpen, because, I didn't even mention Alex Vesia there, who has been really, really good at times. So a lot of potential for a really good bullpen in October. But like always, it comes down to how well it comes together at the time.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll get more into that on Friday's episode, Thursday night as we record. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He covers the biggest stories around the league, and follow the number one daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, wherever you get podcasts, on the Odyssey app or on YouTube. You can find us, Locked On Dodgers, wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vince Samperio. You can get a hold of us via DM on any of those accounts. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-LOCK. That's 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car, or if you're at home, to our smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree, you just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.